page here with a circle. Now you want to start this circle toward the top. I would say center third of your page is pretty good. You're just going to need some room below and a little bit of room above this circle. And I like to add like 5 or 6 of these so that we have some options to choose from. Keep in mind, it doesn't need to be a perfect shape to look like Maui, but I like to add those options so that if for some reason one of these is like a square, that'd be impressive, but that's okay because you can choose your fave out of the bunch. We're then going to divide our circle in half by placing a vertical line going right down the middle and a horizontal line about 1/3 of the way from the top. Now these lines are going to help us find all of the facial features for our character throughout the drawing. But the first thing that we really need to fix up here is the head shape. It's a little too round for Maui, right? If we left it like this, it would look like baby Maui, which would be very cute, but not what we're going for. So we need to angle this out a little bit. Starting here on the sides, right where this horizontal line touches the circle, I'm going to bring up a little diagonal line. Now this diagonal is going to kind of bounce off the circle, going a little bit above it. You want to make sure this ends at about the same point as the top of the circle. And then we're going to do something very similar here on the bottom where I'm going to add another diagonal line, kind of carving slightly into the circle until we get to the bottom. Giving us this very angular look here for the sides of his head. It's going to give him some cheekbones. And we can bring those together with a little U here on the bottom, just kind of following the circle shape. This is a lot closer to his head shape. It's going to make him look a little bit older. Plus, we want to give him that nice strong chin that we see on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? That's exactly what he looks like. He's got that confident chin, looking slightly like Gaston. That's what we're going for. We're then going to combine this on the top. So we're going to go between these two shapes here. So I'm going to go from that diagonal line, and I'm going to add a little rainbow that curves toward the center. Just touching the top of the circle there. This is going to give him the widow's peak and the start of his hair. We're then going to move forward to a few other features, including his ears. Now his ears are going to sit overlapping this horizontal line here on each side of his head. I'm going to add these big C curves so it looks like he has some ear muffs on, or he's jamming out with some really big AirPods, that kind of thing, listening to the music of this movie. And if you guys didn't hear the news, today was actually opening day for Moana 2. So the sequel just came out. They premiered last night to the public. I haven't seen it yet, so we're not going to be watching. We're not going to be talking spoilers. Don't worry. If you've seen it, congratulations. Keep it to yourself. But I'm sure it's going to be really good. I'm sure it's going to be really fun. I'm excited to see it myself, but I gotta wait a few days. Right below the ear, though, we're going to build up his shoulders. We're going to add some little diagonal lines that go from the ear, and you want to bring these out. Give him some pretty wide shoulders here. Now it's starting to look a lot more like a person, right? We kind of can't tell it's Maui, but it's looking like a human character here. We're going to then start to add some more detail. There's more specifics that's really going to bring him to life. But at this point on our page, it's kind of looking like a ghost, right? He's starting to fade away. We're starting to lose a lot of that detail. So I'm going to do what's called locking in. Where starting with the head shape here, I'm going to push down on my pencil and I'm starting to darken in these lines. As I do this, you're going to notice that all the light lines really start to fade in the background as the dark lines stand out. This is our goal. So if you're not a big fan of something on your page, like let's say that circle, not a fan, that's okay. Leave it light and it will disappear. You're only going to be seeing these dark lines at the end, and you'll see that on my drawing here. We're going to darken in the head shape as well as the shoulders, but I'm actually going to leave the ears nice and light for now because there's still something that we're missing for the silhouette of our Maui. What are we missing? Like the outline. His hair, exactly. This is like one of the few differences between Maui and The Rock, right? He has this big, luscious hair. And this was actually something that changed when they were making the first film. They actually were modeling Maui off of The Rock. They wanted him, because very often this happens with animation, when an actor is portraying a character, they like to take certain traits so that it makes the character really connect to that actor. And this is what they were doing with Maui as well. They were taking a lot of inspiration from Dwayne. I feel like calling him that feels wrong, but anyways, they were taking a lot of inspiration from him. However, because of this culture, they knew that hair was very important, so they actually decided to give Maui hair. And for that reason, they were like, could we just put a wig on The Rock? Would that have not been entertaining? Or they could have taken the reference from that like fanny pack picture of Dwayne that I always think about. That one's iconic, it's a great meme. But they actually modeled this character off of his grandpa because his grandpa had that luscious hair. So I think it's pretty cool to see like the whole family come together to make this character. So we're gonna start to build up that hair here. Right above his head, we're gonna add essentially the same shape we just did for the forehead. I'm gonna build up those two rainbows. And then we're gonna start to build up some curls. Now, curls have a bit of a challenge because they're ever moving, right? But also they have a lot of texture. So there's no perfect way to draw these. What I recommend is making it look like a puffy cloud. If you have curls or you just love drawing very accurate curls, you're welcome to do that. But we're simplifying it a lot here because most people cannot handle the texture of curly hair. So we're just making it look kind of like a little cloud. And then we're gonna cover up the top of the ear here, just a little bit, by adding what looks like a curvy S. And that's why we left the ears light, because we're covering up just the top to make sure that the hair is wrapping all the way around. We can then start to darken in this shape, and I can even add some individual little pieces of hair on the inside. Now, this curly hairstyle that we're doing here is actually often seen in TV. We're kind of simplifying it. You can see this is kind of how they draw Tiana's hair as well, especially if you've ever seen her hair like down. It's a little bit different. However, interesting enough, this film, very specifically the second Moana, was actually supposed to be a TV show. But this one was going to be 3D animated the whole time. And this was really due to the fact that Disney wanted to make some sequels for their princesses, and they were doing this in a big form as TV. Now this started with actually Tangled, which is one of my favorite movies. If you've ever seen Tangled, the animated series, that was the sequel for the film. And it really is just the years between, yeah, I know, it's crazy, it's already over too, I agree. But when they were making that series, it's really just the years between the film and the short film where they get married. And that was so successful that they wanted to start bringing this to some of the other princesses as well. So if you haven't heard, Tiana is getting her very own series soon. And then they were doing the same thing here for Moana. She was going to get her own show. And it was just all, again, a sequel to their movies. However, when they started making this show for Moana specifically, they were looking at it and everyone was making this film and it felt a lot like a movie. A lot of people on set, it was a shorter series, only about 6 episodes, so it wasn't very long. And a lot of people on set while making the show kept calling it a movie. It felt like a movie and it looked like the first movie. So for that reason, that's just how they viewed it. And at some point, Disney realized that they didn't really have a movie coming out for Thanksgiving, which is their normal time slot. So they actually decided to recreate the show into a movie. So they kind of reframed it. And that's what's pretty interesting about this new one, is it didn't originally start as a film. So I'm curious to watch it and see if it has any of those TV tropes or TV feeling, because usually they're made very, very different. So it's going to be interesting to see how they transition that over. It might feel different than some of the other films you've seen. Now at this point, it's looking a lot more like Maui, but we need to start to build up his face to really bring him to life, right? This is kind of the silhouette, so if we were to shade this in and play who's that Pokemon, you might be able to guess it's him. But we're gonna go through and we're gonna start to build up the face, starting first with his nose. His nose sits underneath this big plus we made here, and I'm going to add a wide oval. You want this oval to be pretty wide, pretty thin here, just kind of going across. Now we're keeping this light because if we lock in the nose like this, he's gonna look like Rudolph. So I'm gonna give him some nostrils. And on the sides here, we're gonna kind of flare this by adding what looks like a candy cane on the sides. So it kind of curves up and then down to merge with the edge of the oval. Then on the bottom, we're gonna add some nostrils themselves, just giving us like 2 little rainbows. And now he can breathe, which is a good goal to have. You can even add a tiny little rainbow at the top of the oval to add like the bridge of his nose. And look at that, facial feature is already complete. We're then gonna move down and we're gonna start to build up his smile. Now his smile is very wide because he's a very confident character, right? If there's one thing about Maui, he is confident. Now a lot of that comes back from the rock, but we can see this throughout the personality of the character, right? Like you have to be confident if you're gonna steal the heart of Tapiti. That's just how it is, right? And we're gonna go below this to really show confidence in a character. We wanna give him a big smirk, but we also wanna make sure we leave a lot of his chin remaining here. So when I'm adding his mouth, it's really close to the nose. Not touching, but I would say about a third of the way up from this space. You want to leave lots of room below because the chin is very often used to show a confident character. I mentioned that he would look like kind of like Gaston, right? That's a good example of a big chin on a character. You can see this throughout lots of Disney ones, but the bigger the chin, the bigger the confidence. You can actually tell a lot from a character by the way they look when it comes to animation. On the top of the smile here, I'm going to push up some little rainbows. And these rainbows show us that his smile is so big, it's pushing up his cheeks. And I'm going to add his lips kind of overlapping this. The top lip does not have a cupid's bow, which means there's no dip in the middle. It's going to look more like a rainbow on the top. And we'll add a little U on the bottom to give him his lower lip. Now I mentioned, big chin equals confidence. So I want to see if you guys, we'll play a little game. What other characters have really big chins? Jay Leno, not a Disney character, but I love it. That's great. Buzz Lightyear, absolutely, really big chin. Anyone else?
Mr. Incredible.
Mr. Incredible, absolutely. Let's see, someone that loves to bounce. Tigger, yeah. A number one scarer. Sully, yeah, exactly. Honestly, the list could go on forever, but you can see this throughout a bunch of Disney characters and non-Disney characters. This is like a thing throughout the animation industry. In fact, again, you can see a lot from a character just by the way they look. Big teeth often tell you that you're looking at a silly character. Really close eyes could also mean very silly characters, while far apart eyes might indicate either youth or intelligence. And this really just tells you a lot, so that the audience knows a lot about the character just with a singular glance. Now I like to shade in the top lip to add a little bit of shadow there. And then we're going to move up to the eyes. Now the eyes are the most important feature for any character because it's kind of like the window into their soul. We're going to build up little circles on top of each nostril here. So I'm just kind of going right above those. His eyes are pretty small compared to the rest of his face. It's kind of the opposite of Moana. Her eyes are pretty big. We're then going to go through, we're going to darken this in, and we can add his pupils on the inside. Now when it comes to the pupils, in the film they are circles. However, if you emotionally can't handle another circle right now, you can give him a different shape. So you can add like your favorite thing from the movie. He is a shapeshifter, so maybe you want to add something with that. Like you can add his fish hook in there. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when he has a like shark head. So you can put like a little shark in there, that'd be kind of cool. Have some fun with it, it's your drawing. But I like to place these in the inside corners so that it looks like he's looking at us. And I'm going to shade these in nice and dark. You always want the pupil to be really dark because it brings you into their eyes just a little bit more. And you want to make sure the pupils are pretty big because small pupils actually are often seen with villains. Kind of going back to those physical traits, villains usually have tiny little eyes and a lot of sharp points. Once you have those eyes there, we can push up the personality a little bit more. Right now it just looks like he's staring into our soul, right? So if you want to push up the smile, you can add some little rainbows right underneath the eyes to show that the smile is pushing all the way into those eyes there. But one thing that really pushes confidence, but also pushes emotion, actually sits above the eyes. What do you think that is? Eyebrows. Yeah, eyebrows really tell you how a character is feeling. And if there's one thing that The Rock does well, it's intense eyebrows, right? So we want to go above this, and we're going to build up some pretty thick eyebrows. Starting first, it kind of looks like a rectangle that's at a bit of a diagonal, and then it comes to a point on the end with like a little triangle. And I like to make the one on the left right on top of the eye, while the other eyebrow here is a little bit higher to push a little bit more of that smolder or smirk, just kind of going across. And you want to shade in those eyebrows as well. Now, when it comes to the first Moana movie, they actually had a lot of changes. The story wasn't quite exactly what they were planning in the very beginning, and that's what we see throughout every animated movie. Honestly, every movie. Things change as they make films. And then just rapidly grow, they change, maybe new ideas spark. So we can see that all the way throughout. Again, even just the way that Maui looks changed a lot. But also Maui was supposed to be the main character in the very beginning, not Moana. But eventually they were like, we need a new Disney princess. So, they changed it up a little bit. But it is interesting. I honestly think it'd be really cool if they released like an entire documentary about the creation of these films, just so we could see how much those things changed. Even like music, everything rapidly changes. Does anyone know who made the music in the first movie? Who wrote it? Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah, exactly. That's why the music's so catchy, right? It's like still stuck in my head to this day. Every single time someone says you're welcome, I feel like slightly triggered. I'm like, you're welcome, right? It's just so catchy that it just sticks with you forever. Interesting though, because this show wasn't supposed to be, or this movie wasn't supposed to be a film in the beginning, but a show, they didn't have the budget for Lin-Manuel because it was a TV show. So he actually isn't going to be returning for the second one. This one is a new writers for the music. If you've seen the movie, maybe you can tell. I haven't heard the soundtrack quite yet, but I'm interested to see how they adapt it. Instead, the writers for the new music actually were popular on TikTok. If you have TikTok, they were the creators of the unofficial Bridgerton musical. That's who wrote the music for this new movie, which I think is interesting. Now, the last thing that we really need for our character are those tattoos, right? This is really what makes him look like Maui. We need to start to build up this U here that goes around the chin. I'm actually going to build up 2 of these, so we're going to add another one right below. The top one is where we're going to see some tattoos, and the bottom one is where we're going to see his necklace. Now, we're going to simplify the tattoos a lot because they can be very complex. And these tattoos are essentially a character in the movie, right? We see Mini Maui throughout the entire thing. And again, we're going to simplify it, but feel free to add Mini Maui on a little boat. And the reason that these tattoos are so complex is because they're ever moving, right? This is literally the story of Maui's life. So every time there's a new chapter or a core memory, right? It just kind of appears on his body, and it really is the story of his life. So we even get to see at the end of the first Moana that he gets a new tattoo because of that journey he just went with her. So it's pretty cool, and I love to see how they did this detail. This is actually the only 2D part of the film. Even though we are really sticking with 3D animation and newer technology, it's pretty rare to see 2D unless you're looking at television. But for this movie, they decided to add that 2D to really add this hand-drawn look throughout his body, which is pretty cool. I added what looks like a big zigzag, bunch of triangles here right under his chin. And on the bottom, when you're adding that necklace, you want to add some teeth here. So I'm adding a shark tooth right in the middle, and the ones on the sides are a little bit thinner, but still a lot like a curvy triangle. And these are essentially just the teeth from the beasts and monsters that he's fought throughout the years. So we have a little shark here, but they also could be very unique demigods or monsters that he's just had challenged him. I think one of them is a tiger, maybe, but I do think it's pretty cool to see, again, just a little bit more of his life, and even in a more temporary way. You can also darken in the entire necklace, because this necklace here is technically rope that wraps around the teeth. You'll see that going all the way on top of the teeth as well. So I'm going to lock in that entire U, going throughout. And the last thing that we need for our drawing here is to add some shading. Now you can pretty much shade in your entire drawing. We want to give him his skin tone here. So I'm going to shade in pretty much the entire thing except for the eyes and the teeth. I'm going to go very lightly throughout his face. And then when it comes to his hair and the tattoos, you can darken those ones just a little bit more. And when it comes to shading, it's technically extra credits. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to. But I do think it helps bring him to life. And you'll notice that I'm using the side of my pencil because this is the softest and fastest way to shade. When you use this almost like a crayon, it really allows you to cover a bigger surface within a shorter amount of time. And I'm going to do the same thing here for the hair, but I'm just going to push down a little bit harder, and you can start to see that contrast really come to life. And there you go. Now, when it comes to this movie, I love to talk about not only the music, the details, but also the voice actors. One of my favorite actors to talk about in this movie is one that's actually been featured in every single Disney film since Wreck-It Ralph. Does anyone know who this is? Alan Tudyk. Yeah, Alan Tudyk is the voice of who in this movie? Do you know? Hey Hey the chicken. Yes, this Hey Hey was played by a real person, like a voice actor, which is kind of hilarious considering it was literally just chicken noises. And Pua is actually played by real pigs. So, you know, it's pretty interesting to see how that turns out. But that just goes back to the fact that this film changed a lot in the beginning. Hey Hey was actually supposed to be a talking character, and when they changed the character, they didn't want to like get rid of Alan Tudyk because, again, he's been in every Disney movie. He's actually known as the Disney good luck charm now. They add him specifically in every movie because they think it gives them really good luck. And so he's been in lots of things. Not only, you know, does he play Hey Hey, in Wreck-It Ralph, he played King Candy. We can also see him in Frozen as Duke Weselton, and then in Zootopia as Duke Weaselton, not by coincidence. And you can see him in a ton beyond that. He played Valentino in Wish. In Encanto, he played the toucan that abandons Mirabelle, which again, kind of random, but it's really funny. But eventually he just kind of got cast as he's really good at making animal noises. So you can see that with a few of his roles. He played Tuk Tuk in Raya and the Last Dragon. So lots of really random things. There's a really great quote when he was working on this movie though, where he was in the sound booth and he was making all those hey hey noises. And he pans over to the camera and he says, I went to Juilliard for this. You know, like I think it's so funny because hey hey is such a silly character. So it must have been a great time. All those like random screaming noises that Hey Hey does. Hey is kind of relatable, but also really unhinged. Now, if you want to add Hey Hey in the background, or if you want to add his push hook, again, this is your drawing, have some fun. But the last thing that we all need on our page is a signature. So find a spot, sign your name nice and proud, and that's it. You just drew your very own Maui. Now, I would love to see all of your amazing drawings, so we're going to do an art show. On the count of 3, I want you to lift up your boards nice and proud, even if you're not done with your extra credit. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, Maui! Yes, this looks so good. I'm loving the lines. Everyone did a great job with the eyes. The tattoos look great. The hair looks fantastic. Really confident chins. I'm loving it. These look so good. Everyone did a great